It began like so many other days in the digital age, with a scroll. Jasmine Crockett was in her office preparing for a scheduled committee meeting when her assistant showed her a screen. On it was a Truth Social post from Donald Trump, one of several that had started circulating that morning. At first glance, Crockett assumed it was the usual political noise, but the more she looked, the more disturbing it became. Asterisk, the post featured an image of her taken from a congressional hearing, a freeze frame mid-sentence. Her expression misrepresented with a carefully chosen still that conveyed arrogance, disdain, and confrontation. It was captioned with Trump's signature style of all-caps mockery. A mother angry leftister, disgrace to women in office. Below the post were comments from his followers, many of which crossed the line from criticism into outright abuse. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Asterisk, within hours, Trump followed up with more. The second post used a crudely edited image showing Crockett side by side with criminal mugshots, including one of a woman who wasn't even her. The insinuation was crystal clear: guilt by association or suggestion. The caption read, "Does anyone know where she really came from? Something stinks." No clarification, no sources, just accusation, innuendo, and an implied call for public suspicion. Asterisk, the third post hit a new low. It featured an old personal photo of Crockett from her college years, pulled from somewhere deep online. The image had been altered with filters and digital edits to look suggestive. The text above it was short and sickening. "Is this your Congresswoman? Wow." Asterisk, by the time Crockett's communications team began issuing statements denouncing the posts, the damage had already begun. The posts were shared not only on Truth Social, but copied across other platforms like X, Telegram, and Instagram. Far-right influencers with massive followings amplified the message, turning Trump's attacks into a viral cycle of ridicule and misinformation. Some went further, claiming Crockett had ties to foreign agents, suggesting she was planted in Congress, with a secret agenda-coing dog whistle conspiracies common in extremist online circles. Asterisk, Crockett, while no stranger to political pushback, was blindsided by the level of aggression and fabrication. This wasn't just a difference in opinion or policy dispute. This was targeted defamation. The images, the implications, and the language weren't accidental. They were deliberate, provocative, and strategically posted to incite. And coming from Donald Trump, a former president with tens of millions of followers, they carried enormous weight. Asterisk, her staff began documenting the fallout. Messages flooded her office from anonymous accounts calling her racial slurs. Threats, some vague, others terrifyingly specific, started arriving through email and voicemail. Her sister was contacted at work by a man who had seen one of Trump's posts and wanted to confront the lies in her bloodline. Crockett's elderly parents were contacted on Facebook by someone threatening to expose them for things that never happened. The environment created around Trump's digital firestorm wasn't theoretical, was immediate and dangerous. Asterisk, behind closed doors, Crockett met with cybersecurity experts and lawyers. They traced the origins of the images and confirmed they had been manipulated. They identified coordinated efforts to spread the doctored content. Most critically, they determined that Trump's posts were not only misleading, but knowingly and recklessly false. Qualities that crossed into defamation territory under federal law. Asterisk, what made this episode different from Trump's past digital rampages was the precision of the attack. Jasmine Crockett hadn't gone viral before. She hadn't challenged Trump in the media that week, yet for some reason, he chose her. And with his 3 carefully timed posts, he turned her into a trending target, forcing her to deal not just with political heat, but a digital mob primed by his influence. Asterisk, for Crockett, the posts weren't just offensive, they were dangerous. And they weren't mistakes or they were calculated provocations from someone who had perfected the art of social media warfare. She knew that if this kind of assault went unchallenged, it wouldn't stop with her. Trump had taken aim at her integrity, her identity, and her safety, all through the screen of his phone, and the country watched as the lie spread faster than any truth ever could. After Donald Trump published a barrage of inflammatory posts targeting Jasmine Crockett, the reaction was almost immediate hand. It escalated in a way that no one, not even Crockett, had fully anticipated. While public figures are no strangers to criticism and political pushback, what unfolded in the days following his social media assault went far beyond anything that could be dismissed as part of the job. Asterisk, the posts themselves were already dangerous, laced with heavy implications, doctored images, and racially charged undertones. But the atmosphere they created online quickly turned hostile, even violent. Within 24 hours, Crockett's congressional office began receiving anonymous emails that read more like hate manifestos than constituent messages. One claimed that she was a traitor to her race, while another threatened to show up in person and make sure she regretted lying to America. The messages were not vague. They cited specific language from Trump's posts, mimicking his tone and even quoting him word for word. It was clear where they were getting their inspiration. Asterisk phone calls started pouring into her district office, many of them from blocked numbers. Staffers reported being cursed at, screamed at, and even accused of protecting a criminal. Several female aides were told they were defending trash and advised to quit before things got worse. The abuse wasn't just directed at Crockett. It extended to anyone perceived to be in her orbit. One intern, just 19 years old, broke down in tears after taking a call from someone threatening to burn down the office with everyone inside. Asterisk Crockett's family was not spared either. Her younger sister received dozens of harassing messages on Instagram from strangers, accusing her of being involved in a deep state cover-up. One even claimed to know where her children went to school. Her parents, both retired and living quietly, were approached by a man in a grocery store who recognized them from a YouTube video that referenced Trump's posts. He began shouting questions about Jasmine's finances until a store employee intervened. Asterisk, the right-wing content machine had seized on the posts and spun them into a full-blown conspiracy narrative. YouTube channels, live streamers, and podcasts began pushing bizarre claims that Crockett was working for foreign governments or had been involved in a cover-up in her legal career. One video suggested she had falsified court records, while another accused her of being part of an underground group bent on destroying traditional values. None of the claims had any evidence. All of them gained traction. Asterisk Crockett, a seasoned attorney who had spent years defending the wrongly accused, found herself trapped in an Orwellian spiral. The more she tried to clarify, the more the lies spread. Her social media accounts were flooded with abuse. Some users posted her home address, doxing her in an effort to encourage confrontation. Others sent graphic messages suggesting physical harm, often accompanied by hashtags that directly echoed Trump's inflammatory phrasing. Asterisk, the stress on her staff became so severe that she had to bring in security professionals and trauma counselors. 2 staffers requested temporary leave, citing mental health reasons due to the constant threats and online harassment. Even Capitol Police got involved after several threats were deemed credible. Her office, which had always been accessible to constituents, now required added security measures, badge verifications, and restricted entry. Asterisk for Crockett. The real heartbreak wasn't just the personal toll, it was the effect on her ability to serve her community. Several local town halls had to be postponed or moved online due to safety concerns. Her constituents, some of whom had voted for her because of her transparency and accessibility, now had to interact with her through layers of security. The atmosphere of fear created by Trump's posts had succeeded in isolating her from the people she represented. Asterisk, despite the chaos, Crockett refused to go silent. But privately, she was forced to reassess everything from how she traveled to who knew her schedule. Security briefings became a regular part of her routine. And yet, in meetings with her legal team, one phrase came up repeatedly. It didn't have to be this way. The posts, the lies, the threats, none of it would have happened if Donald Trump hadn't used his platform to paint a target on her back. Asterisk, he didn't just criticize her policies, he dehumanized her. And in doing so, he opened the door to a level of harassment that far exceeded political norms. Crockett wasn't just fending off political attacks anymore. She was fighting for her dignity, her safety, and the right to do her job without fear of what might come next from a keyboard in Maryland. Jasmine Crockett had faced tough opponents before: judges, prosecutors, political rivals, but nothing prepared her for the storm unleashed by Donald Trump's social media assault. After enduring days of personal attacks, misinformation, and A tidal wave of hate from Trump's base. She made a decision that sent shockwaves across the political landscape. She would sue him not for attention, not for politics, but for defamation, actual legal reckoning rooted in facts, evidence, and the rule of law. The number attached to it was staggering, $100 million. Asterisk. Her legal team didn't throw the number out for drama. It was a reflection of the severity of the damage caused. The lawsuit, filed in federal court, laid out in painstaking detail the timeline of Trump's posts, the misleading nature of the content, and the measurable impact it had on her public standing, mental health, and personal safety. It wasn't just a list of insults. It was a carefully structured legal argument, showing how Trump had knowingly spread falsehoods that harmed her reputation and career. Asterisk. At the heart of the complaint was a doctrine that's rarely tested at this level, the idea that even public figures have a line that can't be crossed. Defamation law, particularly for elected officials, sets a high bar. Crockett and her team had to prove not only that the statements were false, but that Trump either knew they were false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. That's exactly what they set out to demonstrate. Asterisk, the posts Trump had made were not vague opinions or harmless jabs. They included doctored images suggesting criminal behavior, wild conspiracy theories, and insinuations of personal misconduct. None of these claims were supported by evidence. In fact, several were debunked within hours by independent fact-checkers. But by then, they had already been amplified by Trump's massive following. The lawsuit pointed to digital forensic analysis, showing that the images had been altered and shared in a way that intentionally misrepresented reality. Asterisk, moreover, the timing and tone of the posts indicated intent. Trump had singled out Crockett during a period when she was gaining national attention for challenging conservative narratives in Congress. Her rising visibility made her a ripe target for someone who thrives on spectacle and retaliation. The lawsuit argued that Trump didn't just stumble into false statements, he manufactured them to punish her for being outspoken, and to rally his supporters with a new villain to attack. Asterisk, one of the most compelling elements of the lawsuit was its inclusion of expert testimony. Legal scholars, media analysts, and even cybersecurity professionals weighed in. They noted the speed at which Trump's posts triggered coordinated online harassment. They showed how Crockett's public image had been damaged in real time. There were graphs showing spikes in hate speech mentions linked directly to timestamps of Trump's posts. There were screenshots of YouTube thumbnails and Telegram threads using Trump's language to justify abuse. The lawsuit became more than just a document it. It was a map of how misinformation travels, and how dangerous it becomes when launched from the profile of a man with immense influence. Asterisk, Crockett was aware that taking on Trump in court wasn't just a legal move, it was a political risk. His base is large, aggressive, and loyal. Filing a lawsuit meant she would remain in the spotlight, possibly inviting even more attacks. But she felt that the stakes were too high to back down. If a former president could fabricate lies about a sitting congresswoman and face no consequences, what precedent would that set for democracy? Her legal team argued that this case could be about more than her. It could draw a line in the sand for digital accountability. Asterisk, in legal filings. The team meticulously connected Trump's speech to measurable harm. They cited lost speaking engagements, security costs, and disruptions to her ability to serve her constituents. They emphasized the emotional toll, including threats that forced her to increase protection for her family. But perhaps most importantly, the lawsuit argued that Trump's behavior wasn't protected by free speech, was a deliberate campaign of character. Assassination meant to intimidate and humiliate. Asterisk, Trump, of course, responded. The only way he knows how: more posts, more attacks, claiming it was a witch hunt, a political stunt, and a violation of his First Amendment rights. But unlike a TV debate or a social media thread, a courtroom operates on rules. Crockett wasn't there to trade insults. She was there to present evidence and demand accountability. And in doing so, she challenged a man who had used his digital platform to attack, distort, and destroy. This time, the legal action Jasmine Crockett launched against Donald Trump was more than just a personal defense. It marked a pivotal moment in how political speech and digital behavior are treated under the law. For years, Trump has used his online platforms to lambaste opponents, mock journalists, insult public figures, and push conspiracy theories. He's been banned, reinstated, and even built his own social media network to bypass restrictions. But Crockett's $100 million defamation suit confronted something different. The idea that not all political attacks are protected by free speech, especially when they turn dangerous, personal, and knowingly false. Crockett's lawsuit put forward a bold but measured argument. When a public figure with significant influence uses that power to amplify lies about another public figure, lies that spark harassment, threats, and tangible harm, there should be consequences. This wasn't just about punishing Trump. It was about forcing a conversation on the boundaries of accountability in the age of viral misinformation. In the months leading up to the lawsuit, many legal scholars had warned that the United States was entering a new and unstable phase where online narratives, even when false, could define public opinion and drive real-world action. And no one understood that power better than Trump. With his base of millions, a single post from him could become a headline, a meme, or a rallying cry. For Crockett, being on the receiving end of that attention was more than uncomfortable, it was life-altering. She lived through the fallout, saw the harassment her staff endured, watched her family get dragged into conspiracy theories, and witnessed her own image twisted beyond recognition. The decision to go to court wasn't a reaction. It was a warning. Her legal team wanted to do more than win. They wanted to create precedent. Because if a lawsuit like this could survive early motions and move toward trial, it would open the door for other victims of targeted misinformation to fight back. It would mean that influential figures couldn't just hide behind screens, spew whatever claims they wanted, and walk away untouched. That possibility alone made the case a landmark moment. At its core, Crockett's case asked a simple but profound question. When someone uses social media not just to criticize, but to falsely and maliciously destroy another's reputation, can they be held responsible in a court of law? And more importantly, should they? This wasn't the first time Trump faced defamation allegations. Journalists, women who had accused him of misconduct, and public figures had sued him before. But most of those cases either settled quietly or were dismissed in legal skirmishes over First Amendment protections. Crockett's case stood out because of the sheer volume of evidence, screenshots, timestamps, analytical breakdowns, and expert testimony showing not just what Trump posted, but how it spread, who amplified it, and how it escalated. In private, many in Washington watched the case with unease. Some were worried that a win for Crockett could have implications for how political figures speak. But others, particularly women and lawmakers of color, saw the lawsuit as a powerful message that the digital battlefield shouldn't be lawless. That influence must come with responsibility. That power, when misused, should not be immune to accountability. And for all the noise that came from Trump and his defenders calling the case frivolous, a media stunt, and an attack on free speech, there was growing public interest in whether courts could finally begin to untangle the difference between opinion and defamation in the age of social media warfare. Crockett's lawsuit carried weight because it was rooted in facts. It didn't challenge Trump for being offensive. It challenged him for knowingly pushing lies, damaging a colleague's safety and career in the process. The legal language may have been technical, but the message was clear. If truth still matters, if facts are still worth defending, then the people who twist and weaponize them should be answerable not just in politics, but in court. This wasn't about silencing dissent. Crockett had spent her career defending the First Amendment and standing up for those who didn't have a voice. But she also knew the Constitution wasn't a shield for abuse. If this case moved forward, it wouldn't just test Trump, it would test the justice system's ability to adapt to the digital age. Jasmine Crockett's legal action against Donald Trump was more than a lawsuit. It was a declaration that the era of unchecked digital slander must be confronted head-on. For too long, powerful figures have operated under the assumption that influence equals immunity, that the more followers they have, the less accountable they must be for the consequences of their words. Crockett's $100 million lawsuit didn't just challenge that notion, it shattered it. She wasn't attempting to silence debate, suppress opposing views, or criminalize opinion. Her case focused on a clear line. Truth versus lies. When someone with the platform and following of Donald Trump uses it to knowingly spread misinformation, doctored images, defamatory insinuations, and racially charged attacks, it stops being politics and becomes a threat to public safety, dignity, and democratic norms. Crockett had every right to defend herself, not just as a public servant, but as a human being subjected to a digital assault that had very real consequences. Asterisk, what her action underscored is something America is still learning how to grapple with. Online speech is not just speech anymore. It moves markets, it sparks protests, it can destroy reputations in hours. And when people like Trump post recklessly, the damage doesn't end with the post. It echoes through the lives of their targets, creating chaos in homes, workplaces, and communities. Crockett lived through that storm. Her staff felt the burn of it. Her family faced fear because of it. Asterisk, but rather than shrink from the spotlight or retreat into silence, Crockett chose a legal path forward, calmly, precisely, and without spectacle. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about setting a precedent. The lawsuit she filed wasn't reactionary. It was strategic and measured. Continuing to use his platform to cast himself as a victim of political targeting, but this time, he's not just facing a media storm or a political opponent. He's facing a courtroom evidence and a plaintiff who knows the law as well as she knows the weight of injustice. Crockett didn't just come with anger, she came with proof, legal grounding. And a broader message, asterisk, this isn't just her fight. It's part of a larger reckoning in American public life. The question is no longer whether harmful lies will be told, it's whether there will be consequences for those who tell them. With this lawsuit, Crockett placed that question squarely before the judicial system. And in doing so, she reminded everyone, whether in power or not, that truth still matters, and justice, even